greetings, everyone. Today is another beautiful Sabbath here in Minnesota, and I'm reaching out with Michael today, and Michael's got a script for us. We're in the 7th session of Bruce Lee, and this is the 24th of June, 2023. Michael, welcome.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Hello, dear Brett. This is the 7th session on Bruce Lee already. Let's dive in it. Last time we got a brief information for the official Wikipedia theory, and now we are going to prove, disprove, and to try to use our logic, brain, and common sense. This is the flag of Hong Kong. Nicely fitting 5 pieces of 5-pointed stars. Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China. Special region in China where Bruce Lee was raised and Bruce Lee died.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen the flag for Hong Kong before. That's really interesting. You put that up, Michael. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's not quite different from the flag of China, which consists of 5-pointed stars. Yeah, but as Hong Kong is a harbor city, maybe they have just thought that it would be more appropriate to use that kind of a sea plant, more or less. The former US karate champion Joe Louis said about Bruce Lee, "I consider him by far the greatest, and for those who don't consider him the greatest," I have not inserted that second picture here, "consider him one of the top contenders to be the greatest." He said there's a Zen level of consciousness, but Joe Louis also had made an interview, and he says that, do you think that he would make a good full contact fighter? And Louis said, no, because I don't think he could have taken a good punch. Why do you say that? Louis said his skinny neck and skinny jaw. His neck was just too long. You don't see long neck people up there on top. That's the only thing that ever Joe Louis said about, no. But he considers him to be the best. Okay. Thinking about worshipping images and idols. Another character says Bruce Lee in retrospect was a little man, forged himself into a physical giant, Brett. And the conclusion, our very interesting documentary, which we will use in the next time, says most of us look for immortality in religion, in our work, or on our tombstone, and Bruce Lee found his immortality in the movies. That's a very sad thing, which I think that many of the people out there, they don't comprehend what that means. Because a movie is just a fabrication, it's just fantasy. It's nothing in real life, nothing of real value. And also it's been stated by Bruce Lee himself in a radio interview he gave that he does not believe in God. So he's not part of the resurrection and he's just believing in himself. And he only lasted 32 years. That's a very short lifespan, I'd say. And in China or in Asia, people generally believe more in themselves, because many very intelligent people are gathered in Asia, and therefore they say that, no, we are not falling for any false god, we are just worshipping ourselves, the third eye, self-enlightenment and all the stuff. And I think that's a trap for the so-called intelligent people, that they don't want to worship anything else but themselves, Brett.
Well, it fits, Michael, biblically, you know.
So if you ask somebody in the industry, they say that, oh yeah, that Bruce Lee, this is wrongly translated here, is my idol. I like him, I admire him. Sure, because one actor tells this about the other. And therefore we go into the official narrative of his death. And not saying that Bruce Lee would fight back from the grave here. This is just another movie. When you are dead, and you're not coming back from the grave, you're not going through walls or anything else. Yeah, you're not a wandering spirit, and 500 million other mythologies in any Native American, Indonesian, Asian realms there would be. The Bible explicitly says that the dead are sleeping. They do not know anything. The impact that Bruce Lee or martial arts made around the world was extreme. If you think of 1974, 1 year after Bruce Lee died, there was a big smash hit from a guy, from a singer called Carl Douglas, called Kung Fu Fighting. Everybody knows this. And that is no coincidence, yeah, because that has been produced, and his manager was Eric Wolfson. Eric Wolfson is one part of the Alan Parsons project. So there are no coincidences. Yeah, they are just making money. Yeah, Bruce Lee and all these kung fu movies which came after him, they are just a big money-making machine. Yeah, so this Kung Fu Fighting was a top hit. Look at this placements here. Number 1 in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, United States, and Great Britain. Yeah, it was everywhere. It was the smash hit of the summer in 1974, 1 year after Bruce Lee died. So if you think of coincidences, no, it is just a big money machine. And Alan Parsons' project, let me tell you, is a Freemason project. Yeah, Alan Parsons was the sound engineer or assistant sound engineer on the Beatles later on, and also the sound engineer on Pink Floyd. Yeah, and Pink Floyd has not by coincidence made a song called Another Brick in the Wall. Yeah, there are ties to Freemasonry on Pink Floyd. So coming back to Bruce Lee. What Wikipedia tells you is that he was a martial artist and actor, and the founder of martial arts also, and a pop culture icon of the 20th century who bridged the gap between East and West. Actually, I think, in my humble opinion, I think that's the biggest achievement that he has made, that he was just having both sides together, the West interested in the things of the East. Yeah, and so also presented arts of the East to the entire world. It's not only to the West, but to the entire world. Okay, speaking of his death at the age of 32. He collapsed quite 2.5 months before. He collapsed on May the 10th in an automated dialogue replacement session at the Golden Harvest Film Studios in Hong Kong. And he had headache, and he could then be revived. And then on Friday, July the 20th, Lee was in Hong Kong to have dinner with the actor of James Bond, George Lazenby, with whom he was intending to make a movie or film. According to Lee's wife, Linda, Lee met producer Ray Chow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to discuss the making of the movie Game of Death, which was unfinished at the time. They worked until 4 p.m. and then drove together to the home of Lee colleagues Betty Ting Pei, a Taiwanese actress. The three went over the script at Ting's home, and then Chow left to attend a dinner meeting. And Bruce Lee, complained a headache, and Betty Ting gave him the painkiller Equagesic, which contained bound aspirin and the tranquilizer Meprobamate. Around 7:30 he went to lie down for a nap. When Lee did not come for dinner, Chow came to the apartment, but he was unable to wake Lee up. A doctor was summoned and spent 10 minutes attempting to revive Lee before sending him by ambulance to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and he was declared dead on arrival at the age of 32. There was no visible external injury. However, according to autopsy reports, he had a swollen brain, 13% increase. 13, huh? The autopsy found Equagesic in his system. Chow stated later that Lee died from an allergic reaction to the tranquilizer Meprobamate, the main ingredient from that Equagesic pill. And officially, it was ruled as a death by misadventure. So, his body and his family were returning to her hometown in Seattle, and Bruce Lee had a funeral in Seattle. Yeah, so that's it.
Oh, in Seattle, yeah.
In Seattle, yeah. Seattle. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Donald Tier,
forensic. I lived in Seattle for a short time in the 90s.
Yeah. You told me.
And there's a very large Asian population in Seattle, yeah.
Yeah. Lee's iconic status and untimely death fed many wild rumors and theories. These included murder involving the triads and a supposed curse on him and his family. Donald Tier, a forensic scientist recommended by Scotland Yard who had overseen over 1,000 autopsies, was assigned to the Lee case. His conclusion was death by misadventure caused by cerebral edema, so brain swelling due to the reaction of compounds present in a combination medication equagesic, although was initial speculation that cannabis found in Lee's stomach may have contributed to his death. Tier said it would be both irresponsible and irrational to say that cannabis might have triggered either the events of Bruce's collapse on May the 10th or his death on July the 20th. The clinical pathologist at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Dr. R. Arne, said, reported at a coroner hearing that the death could not have been caused by cannabis. In the 2018 biography, author Matthew Polly consulted with medical experts and theorized that the cerebral edema that killed Lee had been caused by overexertion and heat stroke. That was not considered at the time because it was a poorly understood condition. Furthermore, Lee had his underarm sweat glands removed in late 1972 in the apparent belief that underarm sweat was unphotogenic on film. Polly further theorized that this caused Lee's body to overheat while practicing in hot temperatures on May the 10th and July the 20th, 1973, resulting in heat stroke that in turn
exacerbated, yeah.
Yeah, every time.
Or however they say it. Yeah, it's a really tough word to pronounce.
Exacerbated the cerebral edema that led to his death. In the article of December 2022 of Clinical Kidney Journal, a team of researchers examined the various theories regarding Lee's cause of death and concluded that this fatal cerebral edema was brought by hyponatremia, an insufficient concentration of sodium in the blood. So that means that he had drank too much water. So that is the official Wikipedia page, and now all the mess will start. This is a kind of a death certificate of Bruce Lee at the age of 32. Don't come up with the conclusion that Bruce Lee just died and he was the extreme, smart, intelligent man there ever was on this so-called planet. He was just 32, and with 32 you will make mistakes. You will even make mistakes when you are 70 years old. So come on. So don't judge anybody here. We are just in for the truth. We just want to know the truth, how the system in this world has been rigged, and what my approach is. I just want to find out the most appropriate and most likely truth and how everything has been connected. So I can't give you any names, but you can draw your own conclusion. Let's get it on as just like like we are just inspectors in the criminal department. So 32, a film actor, American. Yeah. Cerebral edema due to hypersensitivity, death by misadventure, unanimous decision. Okay, so that is the official document, so to speak. The report of the death of American citizen, with his American address, says acute cerebral edema due to hypersensitivities, death by misadventure, and unanimous, etc. by Hong Kong, etc., etc. We can go on and on and on. I got many statements here, also from Dr. Langford, who know him very well, and you will hear him later, or you will see him later. They say that no detectable amounts of THC and CBN, the principal ingredients of cannabis, were detected in the blood. But there are other anomalies where we cannot go into at the moment. The congestion of the rectum is unusual, and I'm unable to specifically account for this. Because of this unusual appearance, I suggested that the government analysts exclude the drug cantharidin. However, it may simply represent a post-mortem change. Not one well-controlled study of chronic or subchronic cannabis use in humans has demonstrated any major chronic problems caused by cannabis. Cannabis has not been shown to be lethal in humans. So even if they have found cannabis, also that is not most probably likely the cause of death. We're talking about pure cannabis. More later on. The body of that is of a well-built Chinese male of about 30 years of age and 172 centimeters in length. There are no external signs of injury. There is a small surgical incision on the inner aspect of the left ankle. There is a needle puncture mark in the front of the left chest, 5 centimeters from the midline and 11 centimeters vertically from the sternal notch. There is an old and healed liner scar, 10 centimeters, situated in the right groin. Yeah, because he had a testicle problem. That's been recorded here. There are no recent or old needle marks or unusual scar on the arm. Interesting that they are not talking about the so-called removed sweat glands or any needle marks. The brain weighs more than average. Okay, so in view of the fact that no CBN and THC were detected, I consider that it is unlikely that Bruce Lee died from an overdose of cannabis alone. Tissues from both kidneys were examined microscopically, and the sole abnormal feature is the intense congestion of the kidney vessels of all sizes. So we're speaking now of the funeral. What? I'm not speaking about the medical issues here. Just wait. We are speaking about the funeral here. They had to attend this ritual of a Chinese funeral, bowing down 3 times in front of the deceased one and all the stuff. So, and his widow made the rituals of the ceremony without complaint. And then, during or on the day of the funeral, a sensation broke out from the press. A controversial scandal had broken into the newspapers. Originally, Raymond Chow and Linda Lee told the press that Bruce Lee had collapsed in his home and later died. And then it came up that he died in the home of sexpot actress Betty Ting Pei, with whom Lee was reportedly having an affair. What added more fuel to the fire was that the two were alone on the night he died. So, and the Chinese press were having a field day. About Lee's abrupt end, was foul play involved, or was he truly dead, and whatever happened? Did he die of his drug use because the insurance policies could forfeit the policies because Lee stated that he did not use any drugs? Therefore, the final verdict was death caused by misadventure, which means a series of unrelated events, so that his widow, Linda Lee, could be receiving the money from the insurance policies, what I told you last time. Many observers, including these doctors, were leery not only of the verdict, but of the decision that was Bruce Lee had died by hypersensitivity towards an ingredient of that equagesic pill. Everything here is coming of the documentary Wu-Tang Collection, Bruce Lee Death by Misadventure. Now this is Dr. Langford. Dr. Langford has treated Bruce Lee on the 10th of May when he first collapsed and was on the verge of death. He said that during the trial, the spectators have been excluded, and that suggests that you may be trying to taint the evidence a bit. Not saying that they did, but he said that the spectators were excluded. And now we compare that with the colorful quote of...
There was all kind of conspiracy theories. People thought the triads, the mafia, had something to do with it. It was said that his family had a curse, his father had a curse, that he passed on to Brandon. And what is your belief on how he passed away?
What's the story in the West? I don't know.
Oh, you don't know the story in the West? That there was...
How Bruce Lee died?
They said it was a couple.
Yeah.
They said he upset it because of his success in the film industry and taking the martial arts around the world, that he upset it, the triads, mafia. organization.
No.
Okay, that wasn't true. The other said that he was fighting a curse that was.
No.
Nope, that's not
No,
true.
not
okay.
true.
So what? So,
That news in the public. I think in the old days, 30 years ago, because the communication not fast enough.
Yeah.
There's no internet. Nobody knows. He died in somebody's house. Yeah, that's everybody knows. He died in somebody's house. My boss go to pick him up. And then send him to the hospital.
Jackie Chan said, he just died in somebody's house completely normal. My boss picked him up. That's also Mr. Raymond Chow. So therefore, one involved in this dying of Bruce Lee is also the boss of Jackie Chan. So later the boss of Jackie Chan, and during the time of Bruce Lee's death, that was the companion of Bruce Lee. On the other hand, Betty Ting Pei says, I would admit if I did it. I do not have the right to say anything. Bruce Lee had heart problems. I think he was in poor health since he was a kid. Brett.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you become a martial arts world star, because you got health problems and heart problems since he was a kid, sure. Yeah, what true is that he could not make it to the United States Army because one leg was shorter than the other, and he was short-sighted, and there were some other minor things. Also, one testicle was hidden. There's a special medical phrase about it, which I'm apologizing myself, I have forgotten. But so therefore, he could not be drawn to the United States to fight in Vietnam, for example. Yeah, because he was an American citizen. So usually he was. At that age, he was 18 when he returned to San Francisco in 1959. Yeah, so usually he could have been drawn to the United States Army, but he failed the medical exam, Brett. But that has nothing to do with the death, and had nothing to do with his medical condition at the time of his death. Yeah, yeah. So she's claiming that he's got heart problems. Since he was a kid, and other problems. And then she's boasting and said, he even used electrical muscle stimulator. Yeah, so to enhance her position that he had heart problems, and he created it himself by using electronic muscle stimulator, EMS. Yeah, so that's the position of Betty Ting Pei. So during the funeral in 1973, afterwards, there is the only interview ever showing Bruce Lee's mother and his younger brother Robert. And the interviewer said, Bruce Lee is called the Galileo of martial arts. So please welcome Grace and Robert Lee. So mother and brother of the deceased. Good night, America. Yeah. And on that interview, Robert Lee says, Robert Lee has been asked, are you satisfied with the official reasons given for your brother's death? And Robert replies, says, I really, it's just like a mystery to me. Yeah, so they do not know. Yeah, they are not convinced about the outcome of the trial. I said, okay, then just asking his brother once again, because his brother is not convinced of the official cause of death. So a few years later, he hired a private detective, yeah, and he asked himself, my. On the night that Bruce Lee died, why was Raymond Chow so slow in calling a doctor or an ambulance? That's a valid question. Don't trust the internet, because the internet will tell you, in the real story of Bruce Lee's death, you see that now with the 50th anniversary, hundreds of documentations will arise, and they will tell you that, everything was fine, it was just his own fault and all the stuff. This video tells you a film production company based off Hong Kong, Raymond and Bruce were the best of friends, which is total BS. Interesting to know also that these actors where Bruce Lee had died, Betty Ting Pei, had been introduced by Bruce by Raymond Chow 1 year before in Hong Kong. Yeah. So, and why did it take that long to get Bruce to an hospital? It was about the delayed reaction of Betty Ting Pei, the delayed reaction of Raymond Chow, the delayed reaction of the doctor they had phoned, and then they have phoned the hospital, which was on the other side of the town. Yeah. So from Beacon Hill Road to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, although the Baptist Hospital where he had been treated before, that would be much more close. Yeah? So that you can think for yourself why it took that long. The pill, Equagesic, has been said to be prescribed to millions as a reliever of stress and anxiety. Yeah, so it was a relaxant pill. It was not necessarily a painkiller. But in recent years, the drug had been banned in numerous countries. And doctors are telling you, people, they're having idiosyncratic reactions to meprobamate. Yeah, so the second ingredient is meprobamate. Okay, so going back to that documentation here, Robert Lee, so the younger brother of Bruce Lee, has enlisted a former Hong Kong police detective because he fears that Raymond Chow has something to do with it, because Bruce Lee had intended to make films without Raymond Chow, leaving the company of Raymond Chow called Golden Harvest in danger. So nothing about, Bruce Lee and Raymond Chow, they were the best of friends. It's far from that. But the conclusion of that private investigator, and this is the brother Robert Lee here, was that there was only one thing that killed Bruce Lee in the end, and that was a reaction to, that's a wrong translation here, meprobamate. Yeah? So the private investigator, PI, came to the conclusion it was a very tragic accident, or it's the same like the jury or the trial. It was a misadventure, death by misadventure, about an idiosyncratic or an allergic reaction on that. If you ask Chuck Norris, who broke his silence, he said, that was an allergic reaction to aspirin. Everybody says that. And therefore, at least his statement of Jackie Chan must be incorrect, Brett, because he said he just died in somebody's house, completely normal. But an idiosyncratic reaction, an allergic reaction, is not completely normal. That's why it's called idiosyncratic or allergic. That's my point. Having strange or unusual habits, way of behaving, strange and unusual. Yeah, so strange and unusual, I say, Brett, is just the opposite of completely normal. I don't know if you agree on that, but I say that's just the opposite.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I'm hearing an echo, by the way.
You are totally decreased in volume here. I can hardly understand you.
Oh, all right. Well, anyway, it's as if Jackie Chan is saying, nothing to see here, move on.
Sure, because he's talking about his boss, Raymond Chow, who picked Bruce Lee up. You see that he's involved in that because he had a business relationship with Raymond Chow, who officially picked up Bruce Lee and called the ambulance. Yeah, he can't act any other than to normalize the event.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Or downplay the event.
Right.
Yeah.
Protect his boss, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and the question arises, and here is a prolific Kung Fu genius called Alex. He said, did Raymond kill Bruce? Who would kill his golden goose? Yeah, because Bruce Lee was the golden goose of Golden Harvest of Raymond Chow Corporation, his company. Yeah, and I say that at first glance, Alex has the logic on his side. But I'm not telling that Raymond Chow killed Bruce Lee. Because first of all, he's got the best of all alibis. He was in the restaurant, allegedly, together with George Lazenby, who wanted to have a part in the upcoming movie Game of Death. Yeah, so he's the one who's got an alibi. Yeah, so Raymond Chow has whitewashed his hands, so to speak. Yeah, so at first glance, it seems quite logic that Raymond has nothing to do with that. But it gets much more complicated. Because this is another actor, Shi Qian, who played the villain in the last published movie Enter the Dragon, Han. Is Shi Qian. He said that he talked to Bruce a few weeks before his passing, and he says, yeah, Bruce told me that I treat movies as just a side job. I want to be a director. So that would mean that he was then in competition to Raymond Chow. Not only letting him down, but in competition, which is far worse than anything else. And even the biographer of the name of Matthew Polly, who has published lately a big biography of Bruce Lee alive, said in an interview here that Raymond Chow had a reputation for ruthlessness. Raymond Chow was known as the smiling face tiger. To nod and agree to everything, and then he would rip you apart. So, that is a quote of a biographer who wrote a 700-page book on Bruce Lee. I do not know Raymond Chow in person. But I can just hand over and pass over the information. So that's the book that he wrote, Matthew Polly, Bruce Lee Alive. Now, since Bruce Lee obviously passed at July the 20th. This is a picture of him in the hospital, and this is a picture of him in the coffin. And this is a picture of him during the funeral. And the funeral had been used in the two finishing film Game of Death, which is very macabre, that you use images of a real funeral in a movie. But it gets worse. The only two people missing on the funeral was the competitor of Golden Harvest from Shaw Brothers, Run Shaw, who had just made a statement to the press, and Betty Ting Pei, who stayed at home, most likely drugged with barbiturates, because all the press was, of course, furious about her involvement in Bruce Lee's passing. So the frenzy is that Bruce Lee did not die at home at what Raymond Chow and also his widow Linda Lee first had testified, but he died at another woman's place. And not in normal condition, because he has an idiosyncratic reaction, that's the official, at least, explanation, to a so-called painkiller, which is not a painkiller. So he died at another woman's place, which is unusual. And at the age of 32, which is also more unusual. Few weeks before the original publishing of his movie, which actually then was starring a few days later. So he died at another woman's place. And you have to look twice if somebody dies in another place. For example, here in New York, 20 some years ago, allegedly more than 3,000 people died in somebody's house as well, Brett. And I would consider that plain to be black.
Yeah, that was a really very shocking situation there in New York, and I think that here in the States, it hit the population so hard that we haven't really recovered from all of the what can we say, the sensationalism around it, because they used that event, if you remember, the document was come up by a think tank, by a neocon think tank. There was a document. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's too early in the morning for me, man. Had a rough week this week. Sorry, everyone. I'm just not firing on all 8 cylinders right now. Yeah, Project for a New American Century.
Okay, so you would think that this was just not a normal death at 9/11. Then that was a terrorist attack in any case.
Well,
okay. What?
That's what we were sold.
That's what we were sold. Yes, and
we were sold it was terrorism, but in reality, it's all planned.
Okay, but you see that this is just undoubtedly this is the World Trade Center, which is a complex. There is also a third building which collapsed that day. It was Building 7, the so-called Solomon Building.
Yeah.
And this was a temple complex. Yeah, this was a Freemason ritual. And not only this, there's so much to it when we talked about that in the conspiracy theories about the American rituals. But I'm just trying to get the focus on that kind of a plane here, okay? That looks a very strange plane because with a big wing on the back, I have a hard time imagining that is a passenger liner, usual liner. But apart from that, I think that you would agree that it looks like almost black, okay? Then I present you another
here's
picture.
Here's the thing, Michael.
Huh?
Here's the thing, there is so much speculation going on about the events of 2001, September 11th, 2001. And, I dare I even bring it up? There are people
I just wanted to touch on the subject that you can't be sure of anything that you will be presented in the media. That's my subject.
Right.
Just look at this picture here, where, of course, that must be the second plane because the first tower is obviously already hit.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, we can agree on that. Now, look at this from another angle. Obviously, it was the second plane because the first tower had already been hit. Yeah, so even that must be the reflection of the sun, that the plane is now not black but silver or what else. I do not know. And
well, yeah, Michael, there are people that claim that was a hologram. You know that.
I would just say that you can't trust your eyes because we are going into the satanic media, which means that it's just all baloney.
Yeah.
It's just all witchcraft of a Jesuit called Athanasius Kirche of the so-called Magic Lantern. Yeah, so everything can be faked, everything can be manipulated, it can be modified, photoshopped, and whatever.
Thank you for bringing that up, Michael. That's a very valid point that you bring up here.
Yeah, so we have to take everything into consideration, and you see that also people may be blackmailed or what else. You can't trust anybody. You have only to use your common sense. Yeah, so these are just pictures who do not add up because now something changes here, and also I have been told that there are some kind of a crisis actors too. So people who have a special purpose in doing as if. And don't forget that we are talking about an actor and an actor's death. And we're talking about many people in the actor's business. So who's acting who? Yeah. Speaking about actors and dying in somebody else's place, John F. Kennedy also died in somebody's car. Of course, officially it was his car, but that car was just being lent by the Ford Motor Company. So officially that car belonged to the Ford Motor Company. So you can assume that John F. Kennedy tragically died, if the pictures are serving this correctly, in a car been on loan from the Henry Ford Motor Corporation. got me? He did not die in his bed at home. The 3,000 so-called people in the United States on 9/11 did not die on their bed peacefully at home. And Bruce Lee did not die in his bed peacefully alone too. Therefore, with the 50th anniversary, don't trust anybody. And I have no personal affiliation with Jackie Chan or Chris Tucker or whomsoever. I'm not affiliated with anybody. I have no sympathy or antipathy. You see that I have no problem with that. Yeah, but these people are all in the industry. You won't find any unrelated people here. They are all in the Actors Guild, all in the business here. They are all in the Matrix. Jackie Chan is a Silver Bohemia star. He is member of the British Empire. Yeah, remember that during the time when Bruce Lee was dying, Hong Kong belonged to Great Britain. Yeah, so he's officially one of the people who are representing Hong Kong. Before and after 1996, when there was a big break from the United Kingdom to China, and he was awarded the Silver Bohemia Star, of course, a 5-pointed star. What else could it be? Yeah, of course. And so that Mr. Chan also faced a little problem, which is in the same water than Bruce Lee, because many people tell you that Bruce Lee, there is a family curse. That's why he died so suddenly, also young. One product with Chan, this is just pure Wikipedia, he had endorsed in China was a Little Tyrant, produced by Super, a Nintendo Entertainment System hardware. Clone marketed as a learning machine to circumvent China's then ban on video game consoles. In 2010, Chan served as a brand ambassador for Kaspersky's lab antivirus software in Asia. Let me tell you that antivirus software, this virus software, is also something which has been close together with Bill Gates. Because many people think that viruses are necessarily bad and they affect anything because they have been used to the word and the mentioning of viruses solely for computer programs also. Yeah, so this is a big agenda behind it, to get used to some words like virus too. There's an urban legend called the Jackie Chan curse. Yeah, ABC reported in 2010 that the legend originated because a slew of products sold in China bearing his name, smile and seal of approval have proven defective, prone to explosion and, in one case, potentially damaging to consumers' health. This led to believe that any product or company which was endorsed by Jackie Chan would suffer setbacks. Yeah, so they are very, very superstitious in Asia. Jackie Chan married in 1982 a Taiwanese actress. Remember, Betty Ting Pei was Taiwanese too. Their son, a singer and actor J.C. Chan, was born the same year. Chan had an extramarital affair with Elaine Ying Yi Lai and has a daughter, Etta Ng Chok Lam, by her born on 18 January 1999. I said, Brad, look at the date. 18 January 1999, the poor child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look on other pages, they tell you that she's born on November the 19th, which is very odd, because that would resemble 9/11. But it's just me who's looking to these small details here. Yeah. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11 is quoted.
Yes, put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil.
And this is one of the prolific movies of Jackie Chan called Armor of God. What was the third commandment? You should not take the name of the Lord or the name of God in vain. Of course, we are talking about the Satanic Media Agenda here. And many people have a hard time believing in Jackie Chan's quote that it was just a normal dying in somebody's house, because an extremely athletic and successful young man just dies normally in somebody's house makes sense. Yeah, and then people say, no, he died from allergic reaction to aspirin. Yeah, no conspiracy here. Yeah, okay, move on. So, Jackie Chan is also not always honest, because he claims to make the stunts himself, but he's got a so-called stunt team, and people have proven that he does not do all his stunts. So, no fear, no stuntman, no equal. It is just another marketing attitude. It's nothing of substantial, because he's not always doing his own stunts. So people assume that Bruce Lee had taken painkillers also for his pain in the back, for his sacral nerve injury. So we have to skip a bit. And according to movies that Betty Ting Pei later starred in, called Bruce Lee and I, where she displayed the sexual lover of Bruce Lee, this is what happened. So she called Raymond Chow. These are both actors who desperately tried to awake Bruce Lee, who lied on the bed. Okay. So, according to Lee's wife, Linda, Lee met producer Raymond Chow at 2 p.m. at home to discuss the making of the movie Game of Death. They worked until 4 p.m. and then drove together to the home of Lee's colleague, Betty Ting Pei, a Taiwanese actress. Lee complained of a headache, and Ting gave him the painkiller Equagesic, which contains both aspirin and the tranquilizer Meprobamate. Meprobamate, marked at Milltown, is an anxiolytic drug. It was the best-selling minor tranquilizer to calm somebody down for a time, but has largely been replaced by benzodiazepines, etc., etc. Equagesic was discontinued in the United States, possibly because of its toxic profile and more adequate drugs available. Specifically, meprobamate is more toxic than benzodiazepines, which are also useful as a muscle relaxant. Martial artist Bruce Lee died of cerebral edema caused by an allergic reaction to Equagesic, according to the coroner examination. People ask, who would win, one of the most skilled and physically fit martial artists of the century or one medical pill? And this is an unfair comparison, because Bruce Lee was not quite healthy at the time of his passing. And it has nothing to do, as far as I'm concerned, about any heart problems, what Betty Ting Pei tries to tell you. Yeah? So this is the Equagesic pill. Meprobamate with aspirin. Okay. Yeah. Suicidal attempts with meprobamate have resulted in drowsiness, coma, shock, and respiratory collapse. Some suicidal attempts have been fatal. Yeah, so it's just the amount of stuff which is needed. Then. So the doctor that Bruce Lee knew was Dr. Langford. Yeah, and he said, in the meantime, we know that Bruce had admitted taking cannabis also on the day of his death. And after we did all the things that he just went out of the hospital and said that he wanted to have further examination in the United States. And he went to an American neurosurgeon who said the drug, speaking here of cannabis, was harmless, and that he even himself, that neurosurgeon, experimented with the drug sometimes because he found that very relaxing. Remember, this is 1973. Many people in the 60s and 70s were into drugs. And many people, of course, also were dying because of an overdose of drugs. And this is what he states in that documentary. He said, You got to throw your elbow out of joint to reach in some pocket for an equagesic conclusion when this other evidence, speaking of cannabis, is so obvious, and that may be superficial judgment on my part, but I really had trouble coming up with that equagesic verdict. You almost have to use an Ouija board to come to that conclusion. And it was not his conclusion, Brett, but that was the conclusion of that Scotland Yard Donald Tier. So they flew in a specialist who then was researching the origin of the death of Bruce Lee. And then the press got aware that cannabis was in Lee's stomach. And they even claimed that Lee was a sick man. And the problem is that in the family of Bruce Lee and his friends, they all knew that he was doing that temple balls, Nepalese temple balls. This is a larger picture of it all. Yeah. This you can eat. You don't burn it, you just eat. And they can be very, very effective. And they can be very, very, very dangerous if you overdose them. And according to many, many people on the set of his latest movies, also on the first incident on May the 10th in the Golden Harvest studio, he was chewing these temple balls, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
And now you know why Mr. Dr. Langford said it is much more likely that he had overdosed these temple balls than one pill of equagesic containing aspirin and meprobamate. To make matters worse, of course, the press said, and 2 days later, Bruce Lee was a sick man. He had so much illnesses. He suffered from epileptic seizures. He had, like Deputy Ding Pei said, heart problems. He had any kind of illnesses. It's unbelievable. Yeah, and then out of the blue came so-called drug letters from one of his friends who also starred in a movie with him, Bob Baker, that Bruce Lee was ordering stuff from Bob Baker to be sent abroad from the United States into Hong Kong. Because in Hong Kong at that time, speaking of 1973, any drugs were forbidden. Yeah? So even the dosage of cannabis would have caused a big scandal because it was forbidden, not legal, illegal in Hong Kong at that time. Yeah, so this was already a scandal. And then these drug letters, they appeared. And you have now to stretch your mental capabilities a bit. Yeah. So Bruce Lee drug letter. So can you imagine? Brad, everybody knows Bruce Lee, I guess. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that more than 40 years after his passing, out of the blue, they found letters, drug letters from him on the flea market? How awesome is that? So the letters themselves were recently discovered at the flea market and have since been auctioned in the United States for approximately $160,000. Can you imagine that? That just letters were discovered at a flea market. It is just like a virus out of the blue happening in some fish market. And I have a hard time believing that.
Well, how do you verify the authenticity of these letters?
Yeah, that's the next problem. Yeah, that's the next problem because his so-called drug dealer was certain Bob Baker, because he died in 1993. Yeah, so then more than 25 years later, these letters were out of a sudden being discovered at a flea market. That looks like a case of like Kennedy. You just get out some information so that all the press is just totally flabbergasted about this information. So we do not know what's about it, but here are letters discovered on a flea market. Yeah, like Bob airmail me some Coca-Cola. And that allegedly is a code phrase bred for cocaine. Yeah. Bob, Cooley sent me some coke. How's everything? Stoned as hell. Yeah. So that's what these letters are telling you. And there are some pages out there who are just been handing over that information that it has been stoned. I know that is the just okay. That's that. I know I just made a minor mistake, but allow me to correct myself. What's happening here? Because we need that soon. So what about the authenticity? You can fake everything today with computer programs. Why it has not been showing up 40 years before, or at least 20 years before, after Bob Baker had been died? Bruce Lee's marijuana use had been recently well documented, at least marijuana, mostly thanks to Matthew Polly's 2080 biography on the martial arts icon. It was Robert Baker, or Bob Baker, who started out as a volunteer in 1964 and then became one of Bruce Lee's close friends and confidant. And it was long been rumored that he was Bruce Lee's drug dealer. I think the first one who came up with that was Bruce Lee's widow's second husband, Tom Bleecker. And nobody wanted to believe him, and then out of a sudden 25 years later or 20 years later these letters appear. That's so strange. It's so strange. Yeah, so I need more paper. That could also be code words here, but I just want to leave you in the rain. Air me some fine C, maybe cocaine. Coca-Cola most definitely is cocaine, is coke. And then it has a very interesting thing, if that would be authentic. It would be on April the 16th in 1973. That is 3 weeks before his first incident at Golden Harbor Studios, where he fainted. Linda Lee, his wife, wrote, "How are you doing? We hope things are straightening out for you. Say thanks to Beth," most likely his wife, "for taking the risk and sending the last shipment to Bruce. Don't worry about Bruce using the C. He is not going overboard." I have seen the letter, but I have not shown it yet. He's not going overboard. Yeah, and also that she said that she had also bought some stuff for exact measuring on the cocaine. Yeah, don't ask me where that is. Also, it's thousands of pages. The goodies could be coke, acid, means LSD, hash or grass. She asks for mushrooms. What is it?
Psilocybin.
Yeah, something. It's hard for me to.
Psilocybin.
Yeah. So I have seen that letter here. I have not implemented it here. Don't worry about Bruce using the cocaine. He's not going overboard. And there are many people who are nowadays are believing that he was dying about an overdose of cocaine. Yeah. Usually cocaine will be snorted, and you have to measure it quite accurately, and of course it's very expensive, and usually also it can be injected by access to syringes. One very famous alleged cocaine user, if he would have ever existed, would be Sherlock Holmes. That's why I came across that video here, cocaine in the Sherlock Holmes stories and their parodies. In that letters, it seems likely that they were ordering cocaine as well. On May the 10th, less than a month after that letter of "Don't worry, Bruce and the cocaine, he will not go overboard," that letter signed by Linda, Bruce Lee collapsed. But I do not know, and nobody knows if he was using cocaine that day or he was just using his hash brownies. I happen to know that on the May 10th incident, the doctors were retracting out of his stomach some leaves of
Cannabis.
Cannabis, yes. Oh, thank you.
No problem.
What's really interesting is that you have to take into consideration that it is quite common in China to be used to drugs, especially at cannabis. Also, in his documentary of Bruce Lee Alive, it's been stated that the father of Bruce Lee had an opium addiction. And I have read the entire biography of 700 pages, and he quite clearly goes into this, that he was smoking opium daily and together with his friends on his bed and with the pipe going on and going around the circles and all the stuff. So it was very common. Also, it was, of course, very common in the 60s and 70s to use any kind of drugs. But of course, the result of the trial could only be misadventure, death by misadventure, because there was $1 million hanging on Lee's verdict for the insurance companies, because Bruce Lee had stated that he did not use any drugs, and Linda stated that on that trial too. Yeah, that at least Bruce Lee would not have used any drugs prior to that insurance policy date, Brad. My. So this is also one hint. Next thing is coming up is that there is a conspiracy theory that he might have been a victim of any ninjas. So there is everything going on here. You can't imagine. There are supernatural things going on. There are even Russian guys who are saying that they can get in touch with Bruce Lee, like hypnosis and all the stuff. A Russian hypnotist communicates with Bruce Lee, who is at the sixth level, of a soul realm. If we take that into consideration of what the Bible explicitly tells us about in 1 Samuel chapter 28.
Verse 7 and 8. Then Saul unto his servants, seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor. And Saul disguised himself and put on another raiment, and he went, and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night, and said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring him up, whom I shall name unto thee.
Yeah, that's necromancy. And we know that in the beginning of the session, Brad had quoted from Ecclesiastics, if I remember correct, that the dead are just simply sleeping. Yeah, so they cannot be traveling anywhere. Yeah, but what people do everything for money, it seems. Yeah, they do everything for money. Also, Tom Bellica, the second husband of Bruce Lee's widow, then he says, as many know, the Chinese in Hong Kong and elsewhere are very superstitious. So you can come with so many conspiracy theories that it's unbelievable. And there is also a video of him who says that he was getting aware of a renowned psychic who has channeled Bruce Lee in 1982. Yeah, it's unbelievable as it may sound, but that's Jenny O'Connor says there is some big drug dealing in the middle of all that caused the death of Bruce Lee. Yeah, and I think that is that medium that, together with Jay Leno here, who has a very remarkable chin, by the way, that is that medium here that he's talking about. And he's talking about the name, the mysterious name will be Chong-e Itsu. We now know from the Bible that it's not possible to bring any spirits up of any deceased one. So, Brett, let me ask you that a rhetoric question. What would be that kind of a spirit who would be brought up during a seance, during a necromancy, during a witch, or during any kind of a stuff of a psychic channeling?
It's a demon spirit.
A demon spirit, yes. Yeah. So you can't trust anybody who's doing a psychic, trying to channel or hypnotize or what else to get the truth out of any murder case or any mystery of anything. Yeah. So they are just simply making a fool out of people, in my humble opinion. Yeah. I'm not speaking of Tom, because Tom Bleecker is just telling the event as he has heard it. Yeah, so he said that the medium was violently writing, and Bruce said that he had been injected by hydrochloride. Yeah, that's the video here. Yeah, he had still apparently a sense of humor in the afterlife. I do not know about the belief of Tom Bleecker. I've seen him once in front of a Christmas tree, so I suppose that he is a Catholic. Also, I know the name of his wife. Which very much points into the Catholic region. But if he would look into the Bible, he would see that it is not possible to get in touch with deceased spirits. Yeah. So he's just quoting here from that article. Yeah, Bruce said, laughing, he said Judas, he had been betrayed by a Judas. When we know what that means biblically. Yeah, so I suppose that he's a Catholic. Yeah, and then he said, seriously, a white bird in heaven. Yeah, so that is that video here. If you are interested in all that stuff, in that mystery, you can look that video up. It's called Renowned Psychic Challenge Bruce Lee in 1982. Yeah, so, and it has been claimed that there has been drug dealing in the middle of all that caused his death. You see that when you take that drug letters for real, yeah, there was drug dealing, and most likely all or many of these actors, politicians, and wealthy people who could afford that, they were into drug dealings and drug. You see that even the father of Bruce Lee was an opium addict. So it is no wonder that Bruce Lee got in touch with drugs. At least in that case, in that regard, that it will suit him to relax, or suit him to come up with new ideas and the alike. And you can just guess who's running the drug rings in Hong Kong. Take a lucky guess. Yeah. So Bruce Lee would be very angry in his death, and you see, this is just demons. Yeah. So they are just handing over some names and dates, and people think that there is something to it. Betty Ting Pei. Bruce said yes. Betty does in fact have two brothers. The name could fit. The name's been mentioned here could fit to two of the brothers of Betty Ting Pei, and this will be interesting quite later on. Yeah. So and there's also a name mentioned, Sator, Sator. I need my body found at rest, Sator. And I said, oh, that is no coincidence. And then you know from which direction that psychic channel spread.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's the infamous Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas inscription here, which can be found at many pagan places. One famous place, or infamous place actually, would be the temple in Pompeii. Yeah, that's where Pink Floyd has played live in Pompeii. Yeah, which had an earthquake, and the majority of people there just were buried alive. Yeah, and people worship the death in just when they just go into Pompeii and look at the remains of the dead. How is that? Yeah. Yeah, he said he wants the world to know that he had 2 sperm bank appointments, so that he left his sperm in 2 banks. Yeah, so that we get an I do not know, another Bruce Lee in the future or what. And you have to. There are people who are believing that. I'm just handing over that information, and I find it extremely hard to imagine that that should happen. Yeah. Yeah, so Bruce said, as a psychic channels him, a demon says that Bruce was murdered, yeah, and that's what got him so angry. Yeah, maybe Tom will read the Bible again in 1 Samuel, which we have stated, or Ecclesiastes, and he will come up to that conclusion that there is nothing to the psychic medium, but these people are fooling others, maybe for money, I do not know, yeah. But there are many people who are just claiming they have some abilities, like Uri Geller, the guy who was banning spoons in the German television, and everybody was falling for that, although he just made a trick. Yeah, he just before that so-called magic trick, or this this ability that he allegedly had, he was just rubbing some powder on this spoon, yeah, so that he could easily bend it, yeah, so that made a chemical reaction to that spoon bread, and millions of people on the television, and I was 9 or 10 at the time, they said, oh, that's fascinating, that guy can bend spoons. Can you tell me of one thing? How does he serve mankind with the ability of bending spoons?
Good question.
For disabled people or what? You see that just have to take it with a funny side, but you see that these people are just most likely showing off. Although he had been part of an experiment from the United States government, that I have to say. Yeah, I looked it up, so that he was making drawings in another room of telekinesis. So he was doing some kind of an experiment if he could see things through a wall and all this stuff. Yeah. So there are so many rumors in the case of Bruce Lee. A Japanese assassin, a poisonous herb, a self-inflicting snorting of cocaine. Yeah, that has been for rumors for years. So that in a few years ago, somebody came up with a prolific book and wrote about his cocaine addiction, and that most likely was that the cause of his death. Yeah, you see, nobody knows anything, but the speculation is extremely high, because the official cause of death is so much unlikely. Yeah, so you see, the BS does not end. Yeah, the killing involves also what known as a delayed death strike, or what is it, a death palm, and what else? It's a dimak, where you touch somebody and with delay he will die. Yeah. Gangsters, and some people also think that Bruce Lee is still alive and lives now in a remote corner of China, and will then come back 10 years after his death, but it's just 1973, 10 years later, 1983, and nobody showed up. Yeah. So, in that book that I've mentioned briefly, Unsettled Matters, from Tom Bleecker, The Life and Death of Bruce Lee, he talks about so many awesome incidents during the last years of Bruce Lee, and especially the death. And also he's talking about his conclusion of this ekphagesic. Let me quote something. What do we know about the May 10th incident? We've been told that Bruce, while in the dubbing room at Golden Harvest, felt nauseated. Excusing himself, he then grew weak and perhaps fainted in a nearby restroom. 20 minutes later, he regained his strength and returned to the dubbing room, where he collapsed. Within minutes, he vomited and began convulsing. Another 20 minutes elapsed, after which he was taken to Baptist Hospital, so the nearby hospital that Betty Ding Pei and Raymond Chow could have chosen but did not, where he was found to have a very high fever and he was having difficulty breathing. Soon the doctors detected the brain swelling, which they were able to control by administering the drug mannitol. An hour and a half later, Bruce was revived and, following a period of amnesia, returned to normal. Is this scenario in any way similar to what occurred on the evening of July the 20th? Did Bruce feel nauseated? According to Raymond Chow and Betty Ting, Bruce only complained of a headache. Did he faint? Again, according to Raymond and Betty, Bruce went into Betty's bedroom to lie down. Immediately after that, Raymond left, and the implication derived from Betty's testimony is that Bruce fell asleep. Did he throw up? Doubtful. Dr. Lichette found marijuana in Bruce's stomach. What about difficulty breathing? Only Betty would know, and she never mentioned it. What about fever? Bruce was dead on arrival at Queen Elizabeth Hospital and would have had a subnormal temperature. Sketchy, fragmented, but the brain swelling was present on both days, as it was also the ingestion of marijuana. Next, examine more closely the coroner's verdict that Bruce's death was caused by his hypersensitivity to a single tablet of equagesic. According to Betty Ting, she gave Bruce a commonly used headache pill which had been prescribed to her by her doctor for years. This in itself is troublesome. To begin with, equagesic is not prescribed for headache, but it's used to treat anxiety and stress in patients with musculoskeletal diseases, rheumatic disorders, or injury to soft tissues such as muscles and ligaments. Based on Bruce's history of back and joint pain, it is understandable that he might have taken equagesic. The notion that Betty had been taking it for years is perplexing, in that she had no medical history of musculoskeletal disorders. Secondly, equagesic is a controlled substance that is both physically and psychologically addicting. It isn't likely that any responsible physician would have prescribed this drug to Betty for years. Moreover, according to its manufacturer, White Laboratories, withdrawal from equagesic may cause the return of symptoms of anxiety, anorexia, insomnia, or withdrawal reactions of vomiting, ataxia, and tremors. The symptoms almost jump out at you, don't they? Insomnia, a common complaint of Bruce for well over a year. Anxiety, another. Anorexia, Bruce's history of weight loss and dehydration. Is it possible that Bruce was more frequent user of equagesic than we presumably has been told, and that he was taking the drug to combat anxiety? Although this may shed light on some of Bruce's other problems, equagesic was not what caused Bruce's death. To prove this conclusively, we need to delve further into the drug itself as well as Bruce's medical history. And this is just a small excerpt from the book. This is another book of Bruce Lee from Matthew Polly, Bruce Lee Alive. Bruce Polly goes on to another theory. He said, July the 20th, 1973 was the hottest day of the month in tropical Hong Kong. In Betty Ting's Pei's small apartment, Bruce demonstrated scene after kung fu scene from Game of Death. In telling the story, he acted out the whole thing, Raymond Shaw says, so that probably made him a little tired and thirsty. After a few sips, he seems to be a little dizzy. Just like on May the 10th, Bruce exerted himself in a hot enclosed space and ended up feeling faint and suffering from a headache, to early signs of heat stroke. He wandered into Betty's bedroom, fell onto her bed, and never got up again. A person who had suffered one heat stroke is at increased risk for another, said Dr. Lisa Leon, an expert of hyperthermia at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine. Patients experience multi-organ dysfunction during the hours, days, and weeks of recovery, which increases risk for long-term disability and death. Of the minor drugs in Bruce's stomach on July the 20th, neither cannabis nor meprobamate is known to cause cerebral edema. The only possible suspect is aspirin. The Mayo Clinic lists a potential reaction to aspirin as hives, itchy skin, runny nose, red eyes, swelling of lips, tongue or face, coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, and anaphylaxis, a rare life-threatening allergic reaction. According to his wife, Bruce was sleep-deprived. By all accounts, the stress of filming Enter the Dragon had drained him physically and mentally. He had lost 15% of his total body weight in the previous 2 months, and he had minimal body fat to start. His friends say he was drinking alcohol more frequently, although there is no evidence he imbibed the night before his collapse. and a month prior to his collapse, Bruce underwent surgery to have the sweat glands removed from his armpits because he felt his dripping pits looked bad on screen. Without these sweat glands, his body would have been less able to dissipate heat. And I don't buy this. I'm sorry, I don't buy this, because there are so many other parts of the human body who are able to sweat. Yeah, your entire body can sweat. Yeah, the biggest organ in your body is the skin. Yeah. So, Matthew Polly thinks, in theory, that Bruce Lee could be a victim of heat stroke. Yeah, even 27-year-old Minnesota. Look at this, Brett. I have to enlarge it. Yeah. Stringer Institute, which specializes in the prevention of sudden death from heat stroke and is named after the 27-year-old Minnesota Vikings football player who died from heat stroke in 2001. So, of course, heat stroke is a possibility, but I find that not very likely. I can tell you why. No, I'm not in the script. So, yeah. Because I have a hard time when somebody says, I know the truth. Yeah, he says, Matthew Polly in his book, on July the 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died from heat stroke. It is the most plausible scientific theory for his death. Consider the timeline. Yeah, because the first thing occurred in May the 10th. He was just working in a small compartment doing this overdubbing of his movie Enter the Dragon. His risk factor was increased by sleep deprivation, extreme weight loss, and the recent surgical removal of his armpit sweat glands. July the 20th was the hottest day of the month in tropical Hong Kong. So, I have to decrease it a bit. So, Brad, this is an overview of the weather calendar for Hong Kong in 1973. We're talking about the 20th of July, and which is indicated here in Celsius with 29.4. But it's not that this day is an exemption or so. It's not that this day would serve as an exception, but there are other days too which are very hot. For example, the 29.3 and July the 2nd. July cannot be counted because in June. July. Yeah. So if you look here the week before, 14 and 15 also, it was very hot with 28.2, 28.5. So that is just 1 degree Celsius. That's not that much difference, Brett, I think. Yeah. June with 29 cannot be counted because he was then at his neurosurgeon clinic in Los Angeles in the United States, because I've looked it up in the timeline. I've looked it up in the timeline that in June the 8th he would return to Hong Kong. So he was until the 7th of June he was in the United States. Yeah, so he did not see that June 2nd, that hot day. But there are other hot days in July too with 28.9. So that is not that extreme high temperature, 29.4. When other dates there are with 28.7, 28.9 and all this stuff. Yeah, sorry, I can't really see that problem. Although heat stroke, of course, means severe illness, occurs because of high external temperatures and physical exertions. Preventive measures including drinking sufficient fluids and avoiding excessive heat. But Brad, tell me, when he was in the flat of Betty Ting Pei the second time, he did had drinks. He was in the shadow. He was not in the bright daylight. And he stayed there. He stayed there for hours. So what shall convince me that he's got a heat stroke on that day? And it has been reported that from 2 to 4 p.m. they were at Bruce Lee's home. Yeah. So he was not outside doing any actions or so. That's my problem with that theory here. Yeah, also happens that in young people without health problems, most often in athletes, outdoor labors or military personnel engaged in strenuous hot weather activity or first responders wearing heavy personal protective equipment. And that's what was not the case. Yeah, example of a checklist to protect workers are block out direct sun and other heat sources and drink fluids often. And tell me, I find it not highly likely. Yeah, in rare cases, brain damage has been reported. In rare cases, I don't think so that these are just from rare cases. Look at this name here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Matthew Polly is then ranting about Tom Bleecker because of his unsubstantiated claims that Bruce Lee had a problem with cortisone because of his treatment of his back pain. In Bleecker's scathing biography, he draws broad, unsubstantial conclusions from Lee's cryptokidism, that is, one undescended testicle caused Bruce to frequently suffer from impotence and inability to develop a major musculature without the aid of anabolic steroids and a psychology immaturity. I think that is highly likely that also one testicle can gain enough testosterone, but you see that is, everybody makes mistakes, yeah. But Matthew Polly clearly says that the most likely approximatity theory of the disease of Bruce Lee would be overheating or heat stroke. Yeah, so that is from his book on page 539. Yeah, the hottest day of the month. And the removal of his armpit sweat glands. Imagine what kind of a small area the sweat glands are compared to your entire back, for example. Yeah. So, and the really big problem that I got is if you look at this picture, Brad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You see Betty Ting Pei, and this is Betty Ting Pei's apartment. What do you see?
Looks quite luxurious.
Yeah, well, that's not my point. Yeah, my point is look
yeah, air conditioner.
Air condition everywhere. So what shall convince me when Betty Ting Pei was an actress and she was not a lowlife? Yeah, what shall convince me that they had not an air conditioning running? Or where they are sweating all over the place. Raymond Chow does not say that he was sweating. And if I now would reveal the fact that when they found him, finally, the car that found him from the hospital, they found him dressed with this jacket. Yeah. Usually, dead people do not dress themselves. So, if it was that hot, why they found Bruce Lee with the shirt on? I'm just questioning. When it is so hot and when he is supposed to have a heat stroke, when they were inside an apartment on the second floor, with most likely with the air conditioning running, and he was drinking fluids, and he had a banana, if I remember correctly, and a 7-Up and all the stuff. Yeah, so why should he suffer a heat stroke inside? And this is a drawing here from the bedroom of Betty Ting Pei with a drawing in white of the deceased body of Bruce Lee. Is there something you would recognize, Brett? You can see that kind of a figure here in that drawing.
Sure.
Yeah. How does he look like?
He's just got his arms spread out wide.
Yeah. And what is that kind of a position?
Kind of odd. Don't know. What is it?
Crucified.
Right.
Yeah, so that looks to me very awkward that somebody who finds a deceased one find him in that position with his arms spread wide, and also because usually you would have to make aspiration and try to breathe, try to make heart massage or what else, yeah, and then they find him, the ambulance driver finds him with his shirt unbuttoned. Brett, you will see that later in a later episode. Yeah, isn't that odd? But it is so extremely hot. Matthew Pauly says it was the hottest day of the month. And he died of a heat stroke. And then they find him with his shirt unbuttoned. Yeah, of course, that's why I got a heat stroke, because he's got his shirt remaining on. Yeah, sure. So, there are so many things, yeah. So I don't buy it. I don't buy that for 1 minute. Yeah, so this is a picture of Bruce Lee. He was short-sighted, that's why he was always wearing glasses. Later he was having contact lenses. Yeah, and he had many fights and many enemies here, arranging fights at undisclosed villa in the New Territories in Hong Kong. Bruce didn't want to make it public and agreed it was just for fun. A friend of mine came over and said it just also over. Bruce Lee was just too fast. Bruce ended the fight. He was just too fast lasting. Since then, the other party, Lau, has tried to keep his loss a secret. Witness also complied to the secrecy of the fight, so the matter has not been confirmed. Yeah, it is very interesting when in one of the movies of Bruce Lee called Fist of Fury, it is about a teacher who has been poisoned. Yeah? So Bruce Lee said, "Why did you kill my teacher? Why? Very strange, yeah, all the similarities. All the similarities. Yeah. On the other hand, Raymond Chow, of course, says officially in 1973, shortly after the death of Bruce Lee, he says, "I don't think there's anything suspicious causing his death, Brett. It is just dying in somebody's house. And this is the boss that Jackie Chan is referring to. My boss picked him up. That is Raymond Chow. But he don't think that there's anything suspicious causing his death." But other people saying, well, in relation to making enemies, Bruce, there isn't any problems there. Yeah, he got many, many enemies. And what's very awkward is that he only have finished 4.5 movies. That's the same amount of movies that his son Brandon Lee also finished, when Brandon Lee was officially accidentally shot during the recording of the movie The Crow by Michael Massey, shot with a revolver, who then had not also a blanket, but but it just went on accidentally, and he was shot in the stomach, and he died a few hours later. Yeah, and Bruce Lee said, okay, to make it big in Hollywood, first I have to do some action movies in Hong Kong, but he did not survive that. He could not go back to Hollywood because then he suddenly died at the age of 32. And Brandon Lee wanted to be a prolific actor, went to an actor school and wanted to make drama and all this stuff, and he just agreed to go with his name of Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, into action and martial arts as well, just for a short period of time, for 4.5 films, 4.5 movies. And what happened, that he had an accident. Yeah, it was also, in a case of Brandon Lee, it was ruled as a death by misadventure. Yeah, so also the decision of Brandon Lee led eventually to his death. His relative and villain in one movie, Shi Ken, says, his sister has said this: his spine was injured in the past. One day after New Year, Bruce Lee said, "Uncle Kin, I won't live as long as you." And he gave him the tip to practice less and sleep more, which sounds very logic. It's interesting that his father was an opium addict, and he was 64 when he was dying in 1965, a few days after Brandon Lee was born. Bruce Lee just made it at the age of 32, so half the age of his father, and Brandon Lee only to 28. Yeah, and he says, I treat movies as just a side job. Maybe he felt that something is wrong. So that was the session 7 about the official traditional methods of the Wikipedia with allergic reaction to aspirin, allergic reaction, idiosyncratic reaction to meprobamate or aspirin, and heat stroke, and all the other things as well. And in the next session, we will go into a territory in which usually media does not go to, and even I found a video which I will show you that highly forbids to find any conspiracy in the death of Bruce Lee. I hope that we will make it through to the next session, because the next session 8 will be quite arguably a very strange one. And then we will move on to the second to next episode, which will deal with the United States. Thanks very much for having me, and please read your Bible that you don't be fooled by any mediums and don't be fooled by any traps, but you stick and stay to the truth. Thanks very much for having me, and see you soon. And Maranatha, handing it off to my beloved brother in Christ, Brett.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, it's quite a bit to take in. It's going to be very interesting to hear where Michael is going to take this series, because it's not where we might expect. Right, Michael?
No, Brett's got the advantage that I have showed him some scripts before. And so therefore he knows that all the talking about Bruce Lee does have something to do with a much, much bigger picture. And so that we have a reason in spending our time with it. It is not just a fascination about an individual who did not believe in God, sadly as it is, but it is just a broader picture, because with that maybe I will like to shoot off and to end the Satanic Media Agenda, because then you see the big picture. It also has to do with other individuals which we have talked about in the past, and that's the interesting thing that I think then the circle will be closing, Brett.
That's right. Thanks again, Michael. We'll catch up with everyone next time, and Maranatha.